Okay, welcome everybody. I'm James Cizek, KI0KN, and with me is Mark, N7CTM. And today we're going to talk about something I don't believe we've talked about in maybe ever, at least not in university, and that is the commercial side of radios for ham radio. Kenwood and Motorola are the two biggest ones that we support as of today, and going to kind of go over the pros, cons, the programming, the software, the tips, including a little bit of talk about some older radios and their uses and the things to be aware of, resources, where to get things, the differences and all that. So with that, here's our agenda today. We're going to start, Mark's going to start out with some review. Little bit of DMR in general. This is not a basic DMR class. We're going to cover a couple of high-level topics and go down, but many of those have existed. So, you know, there's plenty of resources out there that we can point you to if that's what you're looking for. Code plug planning. The sample code plugs on the RMHAM website have always been a starting point. And currently, there are Chinese radios and Motorola radios. There are currently no Kenwood radio code plugs there as of yet. At some point, whether it be a new radio or some, you know, a new model, a new manufacturer, you have to start from scratch. But we're going to show you some efforts today, some tips and tricks, especially that Mark has put together on how do you start? How do you, when you don't have a radio, you can just click import CSV. How do you start? Going to give you a lot of resources and tips on how to do that. We'll go over a couple of the models, the most famous models that are most widely used, at least in this area, on our systems. And we'll do that each for the Motorola and the Kenwood sides. We're going to walk through the CPS or FPU as it is for Kenwood and show you a little bit of that, some of the details about what you need to know, some tips and tricks, things to watch out for. And then finally, we'll conclude with a lab. Mark has generated some handouts for everyone. That's if you're interested, you can save the code plug you have if you have one, wipe your radio out, and we'll start and work through that together. We'll also just use that as a Q&A time so that if anyone's got questions about something you're working on, questions about something you've heard today, things like that, we will try to address those and work through them with you. So with that, next slide. And okay. Mark.
I'm Mark Skelton, N7CTM. I was going to go ahead and do that. A copy of the presentation is on the RMHAM website, RMHAM University, under presentations. We've got this presentation up there. I've put a couple code plugs of the sample that I'm going to go through with the Kenwood up there. There's a handout up there. And then I've got an Excel spreadsheet that I put together for part of my planning that I will go over from a high level. This is not an Excel class, and you can download that as well. Also, for the participants in the room, if you've got some questions, Willem has got a microphone. If we can get a microphone so we can put the questions out so everybody on Zoom can hear it. Also, if you've got some questions, you can put them in chat, and my production crew will try to remind us of the questions. So a DMR class wouldn't be a DMR class without a Mike's doctrine. We've all heard it before. I think John's tired of hearing it at times. Not necessarily going to read it, but if you do want some of the basics, you could have been here last month. But Mike's got his presentation again up on the RMHAM website. You're free to download it to get some more of the basics. So continuing on Mike's doctrine, and I don't think it's just for DMR, a lot of the commercial radios were not set up just for amateur radio. So there are a lot of the features and some things there that we won't get into today because we're not in the commercial world. You know, some of us may do some events that we use a Part 90 radio and do some commercial work, but I'm not going to go into the encryption and some things since it's not allowed on amateur radio. At its basic form, we've got a code plug. It's nothing more than a file that contains programming information that you upload to your radio. And it's a lot easier to do with a CPS programming software to go ahead and put everything in on the computer rather than typing it on the front pad. We'll talk about some of the analog access. All of these mean the same things. You've got the CTCSS, you've got the DSC, Motorola has PL or private line, and Kenwood's got to be different and calls it QT or quiet tone. So there's some more of the definitions for your review here. In terms of programming software, it is Windows based. It does not natively run on a Mac. It doesn't run on Linux or whatever, DOS, any of that it doesn't run on. I have had success running this software under Windows parallel on a Mac on a virtual machine, but with the caveat is it may not always work. So this is at your own risk. This is what I've chose to do. I haven't had any problems, but your mileage may vary. CPS is customer programming software. I think this comes from Motorola. That's typically what they've called their programming software. And we call it, with Kenwood, it's actually field programming unit, but almost everybody in the Chinese radios call it CPS. So that's like with an adjustable wrench. Most everybody's going to say, hey, give me a crescent. So that's where we have on that. And I've kind of put together a graphic to kind of show the pieces that are needed for a code plug. So on the left-hand side is some of the frequencies that you'll need. You'll need to be concerned about bandwidth for DMR, the time slot, your analog access control. The NAC is for P25. We got talk groups and receive groups and MIC criteria. So what I tried to do here is, show an FM analog. These are the pieces that you can have. CTCSS and for encode and decode, it's not required, but you can put it on, or you can put it on so the repeater actually encodes it. And if you want to hear it on your radio and not some of the garbage when you're driving around, you'll put it on the decode side. So, with the DMR repeater, this is some of the pieces that you'll put in your code plug. I put a simplex example. The big difference with that is, they put it all call in rather than a talk group. And we're not going to do a lot on P25. The programming is pretty much similar, except that they're calling it a NAC code. So initially, for kind of the code plug planning or getting started, this is not really from the maintenance or you can use the things that we'll learn here for some maintenance, but this is assuming that you don't have a code plug, or, how do you get started? You've got yourself your new Motorola radio or your new Kenwood radio, and you haven't had DMR. How do you get started? So one of the things that you'll need is the radio ID. I'm going to go through, where you get yours. Where do you get the channel information? How, what are some of the sources that we can have here in Colorado to say, hey, where do I start? How do I get the information? I know I've got the method that I use, and I will present it. I do a lot of copy and paste. I put it in an Excel spreadsheet, so all of my information is together. But this is what I've chosen to do. You'll have to figure out, what makes sense to you. And then I'll kind of, putting it all together, and then we'll get into some of the real-time drive-through with some of the other, with some of the CPS software. So the first place is, where do you get your DMR radio ID? You go to you could see the website here on it, or you can search DMR radio IDs. It comes up. You'll need to log in if you don't have an ID. Create a user account. They require you to upload a original copy of your license, not just a reference copy, and then you can get an ID for your radio. They also do NXDN IDs here as well. Also on this website, you can search for other IDs. You can download the whole database. There's real close to 300,000 contacts. So you can download it, you can massage it, and you can use these as individual IDs in the radio if you so choose. They are not required from an individual ID standpoint.
effort to get a proper ID and program it into your radio properly. Even though your radio will transmit and work, it will not route through the network, and you will not be talking where you think you are if you do not do that. Yeah, you can, but it does not work very well.
Okay, John's just showing me a correction. I'll review it here and figure out how to make it work here in a bit. Thanks, John. Oh, thanks, Doug, for paying attention and keeping me honest this morning. So part of the place that you can get started is to go to the RMHAM website under sample code plugs, and you can see what we've got. And again, remember, these are samples. If you put it in your radio, some of them may have the ID that are in them needs to be changed. There may be a contact in some of the code plugs that says change me or something that may come up on others' radios who's using a sample code plug. This is one of the sample code plugs. There's some Motorola in here that you can open it up with the software to see how it is laid out. The Chinese, I highlighted that because there is an import for the CS model that Mike has provided that you can kind of open up and find out what's in the code plug from like an Excel spreadsheet. Also the Anytone, if you've got the software, it's free to download. You can export the whole code plug just to find out what makes sense for you in your planning. Also, we've got, if you just want to totally start to see the Rocky Mountain DMR network, again, go to the RMHAM site under information, and you can get it. And this is what will show up. This is a frequency table that shows the repeaters that we have in the DMR network. And one thing I wanted to point out is if you take a look at Akron, which is in Colorado, and Albuquerque and New Mexico, notice the repeater input frequencies. The receive input in New Mexico is on the high side, and we do it on the low side in Colorado. And I know none of us has ever made a mistake by putting that in your radio, but it's something that I point out because otherwise you have to go back to the code plugs and make the change. We've got the talk groups. Again, you can highlight this, copy and paste it into Excel, and do some manipulation as your choice, so you've got information readily available when you make a code plug. If you want to see kind of the coverage on the map and where we are in for the wide network, here's the information that you can need to program into your radio. You've got your frequencies, you've got your color codes, you've got your time slots, and you've got the talk group. So, you're ready to go on this. Another place that you can get some information is from the CCARC website, Colorado Council of Amateur Radios. Willem has done a lot of work on the website. We're also on part of the committee for some of the frequency coordination. And this is, these are the repeaters that are coordinated. It's probably, I would say, the best source of information for a lot of the analog, but it is only as accurate enough as the information that's updated from the clubs. But on the right-hand side, you can see the little boxes for 2 and 3. You can download a sheet of all of the coordinated repeaters in Colorado. And this particular one, I did the filter down to get the UHF. I put it in Excel and was mainly looking at FM wideband to get some of the frequencies and some of the access information. Also, I want to point out on the CCARC website for Colorado, we've got 10 frequencies that are recommended to use for hotspots. These are a dual pair, so the other part of the pair you can use for transmit if you want to, if you've got a hotspot that's duplex. Here's a website if you want to figure out the repeaters in Wyoming. Again, you can kind of copy and paste it. All the information to get for the code plug is in the spreadsheet. It shows the talk group IDs as well. You can go to some of the radio clubs websites. I mean, there's the one on the left for NCARC, the repeaters that they have. On the right, it's you know, the Lark repeaters, like James mentioned. You know, we're all, you know, part of various clubs, support other clubs, and Rocky Mountain Ham. Here's the other option, repeater book, and I caveat this that your mileage may vary, but it's a starting point if you can't find it, or for other states. I just figured I'd throw it in there. And you know, this is kind of an eye chart. I'm not going to go directly to it when we do the live feed, but you know, for me, it works to have all of the information in one place. So I go through and, you know, put the IDs that I'm going to use, the zones, how I want to use them, you know, the length of the fields so I can copy and paste either from here as a table and put it into some of the radios, or at least, you know, hey, the zone ID, I'll copy it, I'll paste it. I don't like to type because I make mistakes. So was there a question? So this is the way I've chosen to do it. I will review a little more live on the spreadsheet and where we can zoom in on it a little later on before I get started with some of the Kenwood programming. There is a copy of this on RMHAM website with the presentation. I just provided it if you get a feel on some of the things that I've done. Back to James.
Thanks for the review there. That was kind of an overall, you know, review there. He touched on some high spots on where you can get started and things. We'll go into a little more detail there as we go along. But I want to stop or come back here for a minute. Reset. Let's take a step back and talk about why someone would choose a commercial radio over you know, a traditional ham radio. There are some pros and some cons to doing this, and I think you know, the price point and the perceived price point of each of the solutions, I think plays a lot to do with it these days. Everyone know the Chinese radios are, you know, they used to be really, really cheap. Now they're starting to, as you know, some of them, the higher quality manufacturers are releasing things, the prices are starting to creep up. And yeah, if you go to a, you know, just a straight up commercial dealer and ask for a price on a radio, you'll probably fall over. But there's a lot of options. There's a lot of used options, and there's a lot of ham friendly dealers. So why would we choose a commercial radio over a, you know, traditional ham radio? Rugged and dependable, right? These things are bricks. You can, I know that many in the room have probably seen some of the old videos where, you know, someone grabs their Motorola HT and just chucks it across the room. Thank you, Doug, for the live demonstration there. You know, and they survive. There's one of our fellow RMHAM members, Mike Gursky, was helping on a site visit, and he dropped a I believe it was a 7550 Motorola off the tower from long ways, 80 feet, something like that. And they dug it out of the mud, dusted it off, and it was fine. So the ruggedness of these things cannot be understated. This one's a big one, especially in today's world where things are getting noisier and more congested in our frequencies. The front end of these, the receivers in these radios, blow ham radios out of the water. They are tight, filtered well, designed well. And there's the reason, you know, there's one main reason, right? These were designed for, they're usually single band. They were designed for one band. It's really easy to make a high quality front end that listens to a very small area. Ham radios generally have the opposite. We want them to listen all over the place. You know, how many of the ham radios do you know that aren't general coverage receivers as well as where they're designed to transmit? These don't do that, and the reason is they're designed to work public safety emergencies, right? We get a whole bunch of people in a noisy environment, lots of radios, and their radios work. This is one of the pros, I think, in the commercial radio space. Well, you know, reliability. I mentioned that one already. Public safety uses these. These are designed to work in the most harsh conditions and be mistreated and continue to be reliable and work. This is a neat feature here. that up until recently was only available in commercial roaming. So although it's different, we're going to go into the details of how and why it's different and works. Roaming allows your radio to just transfer from repeater to repeater as you move up and down areas, and you don't have to change the channel and find things. The Anytones now do support roaming. I think that's the only Chinese manufacturer. I'm not sure about the other. I know there are some ham manufacturers doing DMR. I'm not sure, but all of the commercial radios do it, and they do it in conjunction and designed properly with the repeaters. The last one I just want to touch on for a moment, because it's a changing landscape for us in emergency communications. We know that amateur radio has long since been used to support public service events. We do ARES events for emergency communications, but we do a lot of event support to practice our ARES skills, right? We support bike rides and marathons and things like that. Well, I think the line is fairly clearly drawn, and there's actually been some recent clarifications on what you can use ham radio for and ham radio frequencies for at these events. When you're supporting a paid money-making event, we cannot use ham radio frequencies to do any coordination of that event in any way, or we are in violation of our license. We can still do potentially life and safety support, right? People support, things like that, but we cannot talk about the race. We can't say we need a logistical thing to happen. So Part 90, the commercial area, is becoming a much bigger part. Now with OXCOM as a new program that's, you know, fully vetted in the state and operating regularly, it really brings Part 90 again into the picture. We have options besides ham radio in conjunction with ham radio that we can use to support all of these different things. You had a question, John?
Yeah. Colorado area section level is currently in the process of licensing a handful of itinerant commercial frequencies that we can use for commercial events, both VHF and UHF. We don't have those available at this time, but the work is in progress, and having these Part 90 radios will go a long ways towards utilizing those frequencies.
Thanks, John. And let me take one quick moment here, because I know this raised some eyebrows. Commercial and business and Part 90 are not replacing ham radio in emergency communications. They're supplementing it. So we do not see this as a replacement, you know, for that. It's just a supplement. It's a different way to handle things legally so that we can be a bigger service to those that we serve, which is why we have ham radio licenses in the first place. So given the Part 90 compliance, the ham radio, what can we use on ham radio frequencies? We can build a radio from scratch and use it. The Part 90 or business class license, a little different story, right? They're very, very tight. Those radios, it's a very crowded band. They have to be clean. They have to be Type 90 certified. So I urge you, if you're interested in this type of communication, to look carefully at your Part 90 certification of what you potentially might be buying. If you buy a commercial radio, you are covered. They are all, they are designed into Part 90. We just happen to use them in the ham bands. A lot of Chinese radios are saying they have Part 90 certs. Some have Part 90 certs that went through the certification process. Some just published a copy they found on the internet and said, we're certified. Some have legit Part 90 certs. And if you go take 10 of those radios and put them on a service monitor, 7 of 8 of them won't meet those certifications. So not only do you have to be careful about buying one that is Part 90 certified, but a lot of the Part 90 folks that are running these, you know, people that are graciously donating or leasing or whatever our business class, they're not going to let you on their repeaters with radios, even if they have a legitimate Part 90 cert, if they know there's some dirty ones that could put their license in jeopardy. So off of my soapbox about that, it's just an important consideration if that's what you choose to do with your radio, you know, as you use your radio for support. Okay, let's talk about the cons. There are some cons to commercial radios. You know, if you look at, it depends on what you want to do with it again, but the CPS or the FPU, if you will, for Kenwood is usually not free. You have to purchase it, you have to lease it, buy a subscription to it, something like that. This was a big, scary thing for a lot of folks, especially in the Motorola world. But several years, it's been quite a few years back, Motorola addressed that issue and they offer a subscription to their customer programming software now that is extremely reasonably priced for hams. And I believe it's a 3-year subscription at a time. The nice thing is it covers the whole suite of radios. You don't have to buy one for this and one for that, one for that. If you buy a Motorola DMR subscription, it covers all of the XPR series and the repeaters. That's right. It doesn't stop at 3 years. You just don't get the support. The other positive thing about this is anyone that owns a legitimate legal copy of CPS can program anybody's radio. So Rocky Mountain Ham has a cache of licenses, and there are many people that will offer to help you program your radio. And many of us have individual subscriptions, and we all offer this pretty much the same thing. There's a lot of help out there if you don't want to buy your own. The last time I checked, I think it was $170 for 3 years. And the question that was asked from the audience was, what was the price of the Motorola and CPS subscription? It's if I remember right, about $170 for a 3-year subscription. And Doug, what was the Kenwood? Kenwood's just over $100. So, so you know, it's if you look at a $400 or $500 radio, which you can spend on anything, Chinese radio or anything, the software is not inordinately expensive comparatively anymore. As I said, most of the commercial radios that we're looking at for ham radio use are single band. There are dual and triple band radios out there, but unfortunately, most of those don't fall in the bands that we're the most interested in. So, you know, you're usually looking at single band radios, which means if you want to be on more than one band, you're probably going to have to buy more than one radio. So there's some expense to that. Again, if you shop carefully or find ham-friendly dealers for new equipment, the pricing is very competitive and it is not sky high. So people would be surprised. If you buy from you know, there are lots and lots of deals from reputable dealers on eBay even, where you can find amazing prices. We'll talk about models in a minute, but XPR 6550, this is a discontinued model by Motorola. It's a UHF DMR / analog radio. If you're careful and you look and wait on eBay, you can buy these all day long, $60 to $80. Sometimes if you don't want to wait that long, you can buy them all day at $100. With all the accessories. That may or may not have a battery, but it'll have an antenna and a charger that does cycling the battery, the whole 9 yards. So, you know, this is, you're talking about a good savings there. Okay. When you're programming commercial radios, you want to be a little careful. My recommendation is that you always use the OEM cable. Yes, there's alternatives all over the place for programming cables. It is possible to brick a radio by using a bad cable. So first and foremost, my recommendation is always to use the manufacturer's OEM cable to program the radio. They are expensive. They can be expensive. This is the PMKN 4012B cable. This is the Motorola's latest cable for most of their DMR HTs. If you buy this cable brand new from a dealer, it's going to be close to $100 cable, but you know it's going to work. Now, if you don't want to spend that kind of money, there are some, like I said, reputable alternatives. There is an eBay seller out of California, Blue Max 49ers is his ID. I've got a lot of experience with these cables. They're Chinese cables, but he specs them and has them built to his specs and tests them himself. And I've found that they work very well, and they're on the order of like $30 instead of $100. He's not the only source. It's just one that I have experience with and can, stand behind as being a good seller and good chance of working. The other one, and I'm going to let Mark go into the details about this, and I learned this the hard way. Be careful, because some commercial radios have more than one way to program them through the same port. And there are some very serious performance differences between that. So I'll let Mark talk about that, but I was ready to throw some radios across the room when I was taking 14 and 15 minutes to read the code plug out of them. All right, so let's talk about I'm going to talk about the Motorola side and let Mark do the Kenwood side. DMR is the most prevalent digital mode in the Front Range. It's also the mode that the entire Rocky Mountain, ham, and the Wyoming networks are built on. So we're going to talk about a little bit of other things, but we're going to focus on mostly on DMR stuff. The XPR line is the DMR line that's most prevalent. There are some DMR Motorola radios that start with CP. The CP2, I think it's 300. There are some DMR radios there that in those lines as well, but the XPR line and the SL line. And so, these radios on the table here are, I'm not sure which, yeah, there we go. These are the XPRs. This is an XPR 7550. We'll go through that here. Thanks, John. And then the SL line we have is, just a small, more pocket-sized version of this. And there are limitations of these. Batteries. Very quick note on batteries. There are two types of batteries. If you buy a commercial battery in Motorola, it's going to be what they call an impress battery or a smart battery. The batteries have a little chip in them. They communicate with the charger. The charger can calculate out, it can cycle the battery for life. It can tell you approximate charge, approximate life left, how much life's going to be left after a cycle. A lot of information really helps, especially, it was designed for public safety where they need to make sure the battery's going to last all long. So when they get to a certain level, they can change them out. It's pretty neat though, to turn your radio on and see how much life it's got left in it. Lots of people, a lot of third parties are making non-impress batteries. They work. You won't get that, you'll get basically no scale, no idea what's going on with the battery. The chargers will typically not cycle them. They'll just charge them. Good news is all the Motorola chargers will charge them. They just charge them as a dumb battery and, it's full and here you go. Good luck. Nothing wrong with them, right? They last. There's a lot of them that last. Good news is some third parties are now making smart capable or impress capable third-party batteries that are a lot cheaper than the OEM Motorola batteries, and they seem to work great too. Yes.
You're one of our battery experts and have given talks on these. You might comment on the difference between lithium ion, lithium polymer. We are getting a lot of not impressed batteries that are third party that are lithium polymer and extended capacity. Maybe you could comment on the difference of performance between those. And I'll put in a shameless commercial as a commercial dealer in the room for some of the Motorola line and the Kenwood line. If you need batteries and you want, if you can find them online and somebody's got a good sale on them, do it. But if you need a new battery, call us at CCC, ask for the RMHAM friends and family discount, and we'll get you hooked up. But on my radios, I'm not running manufacturer batteries anymore. I'm running the third-party ones that we found, and they have almost twice the capacity.
Thanks, Doug. And that's a really good point. A lot of the older lines typically came with nickel metal hydride batteries, and now they've been replaced with lithium ion or lithium polymer or lithium, the LiFePO4 batteries. All of those batteries that in my battery talk that I gave for university, I think it was a year ago, I talked a lot about the differences in those batteries. I also talked about the safety of those batteries. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about here. The way they're packaged in the commercial applications, you really don't have to worry too much about the lithium chemistry type. They have put a lot of the safety precautions into the battery for you. So your big choice is really just getting the old NIM batteries or get a lithium. And as Doug said, the lithium battery life is phenomenally longer. So it's worth the lithium, slightly elevated price of the lithium to get it. I say elevated, but depending on the model, sometimes it's more expensive to buy the old nickel metal hydrides because they don't make them anymore. Everybody's going to the lithium. So that's a good point. Very briefly, I just wanted to touch on the programming options that you have in the Motorola line. OTA is over the air. We're not going to talk about these. Most of these radios are capable of that. Most all commercial radios are capable of that anymore. We're not going to talk about that today because it requires a whole nother set of licensing and infrastructure to make that happen. And it's not really something that the average ham user is going to do. Wi-Fi kind of falls in that same one. Only the newest of radios, and in the XPR line, the E radios support Wi-Fi programming, while the non-E radios do not. Again, it's not a popular thing, and it does take more infrastructure. We'll focus today on cable and Bluetooth. Cable is exactly as I mentioned, just the programming USB cable you tie to your computer and the radio port. And I'm going to teach you today how to set up Bluetooth programming on these radios if it supports it. And there's always caveats with everything, so we'll cover some of those. And the Motorola radios in the gang chargers actually support through the charger programming. So when people at the end of the day throw their radio in the charger, you can have that set up to program the newest code plug in there. Just again, an FYI that it does it. We're not going to cover that today because it requires a bunch more. I'm going to talk about ignition sense. I'm going to mention it multiple times in this. Motorola radios have a habit of, especially when you buy them used from places, have a habit of showing up dead. People plug them in and turn them on and they don't turn on. Well, ignition sense is a programmable line on the GPIO connectors or the radio connector of a lot of these models. And if it's programmed to require ignition sense, what ignition sense is a line that turns the radio on with your ignition and off with your ignition in your car. And if ignition sense is programmed on exclusively, the radio will not turn on even with 12 volts on and the power switch on until that ignition line is brought high. So a lot of folks are like, I had a dead radio. And all they really need to do is bring the ignition line up. Then you can go in and change the programming to operate a different way if you like. I mentioned the model line. Dave. Yes, thank you for that. The band split when you're buying used radios, that's really important. Some radios have multiple ranges of frequencies they can work in. So for example, in the chat, the UHF there can be low split, high split. Some of them have 3 splits. Make sure that if you're looking at a radio, make sure it actually covers the band that you're interested in. Make sure it covers the ham band. You will find folks that say it's possible, and sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, to make a radio work, out of the band split. It's just better to buy one that works natively in the ham bands. So be cautious of that. Thank you for the tip there in the auction about that. The lineup I show you on the screen is the most commonly used line here along the front range in the DMR line. Here is the oldest radio. This is the XPR 6550. I wanted to take a very brief moment and talk about model numbers. You'll find in Motorola's that the last 2 digits often end in 00 or 50. 6550, 6500. You won't see any difference on the outside. 6550 has a GPS built in it. Doesn't matter because we can't use it. In commercial use and public safety, these radios can ping their position out all the time, so dispatch has a map. But when they do that, they don't transmit our ham call sign. So it's illegal unless we manually transmitted it. It also requires a massive amount of infrastructure on the dispatch side to see and read all that stuff. So don't worry as much if you're looking at radios and you find a 6550 or 6500. Caveat, they use different code plugs and they're not compatible. So you can grab like a 6500 off eBay. You can grab a 6550 code plug off the RMHAM site and then copy paste all the data across and it works, but it is different. The 7550 replaced the 6550. This is a 7550. Now the newest line is 7550Es. Real easy way to tell on the side of the radio. Look at the PTT key. That is a 7550. That is a 7550E. The E's have a white ring around the PTT key. Enhanced. Expensive. Yeah. So that's one physical way to tell the difference. And I said, you know, honestly, there's really not a lot of, you know, it adds Wi-Fi, which we're not using anyway. There's really no difference. So I would not shy away from buying a 7550. Personally, I kind of prefer it because a lot of the E's have firmware in them that is a little bit too high. We'll talk about that in a moment. The SL 7550, I think 7500 or 7550. That is a neat little cell phone sized radio.
Digital only.
But it's DMR only. This one will not do analog channels, but they're great little radios. These will do analog DMR, DMR only. And then we've got the SL300 line, SL3500 line. Those come in a variety. They're also small little guys. This is an SL300. It actually has a display, the kind of LED display that shows through the front panel. Well, this is an SL3500 and has an LCD display, but they're also really small, compact little radios that are just, you know, just phenomenal. There are differences, right? This is a 2-zone 99 channel radio. Well, these other ones are 1,000 channel radios and lots of zones, more zones than you need. I don't remember what the exact spec is.
How well that little stubby antenna works.
The UHF stubby antenna is amazing. I find that it's just every bit as effective as the standard whips that we use on the other radios. You're right. Yeah, the audio is really good. So these are the DMR lineup. We did talk, we're going to focus on DMR, but we can't ignore P25. There is a little bit of P25 in the front range here. There's actually a nice linked system run by Tracy, KI0HC on 900 megahertz P25. So this is kind of the lineup of P25 radios for Motorola. The XTS 2500 and the XTS 5000, you'll see the main difference is the full keypad versus the non. There are other features as well, but those are both P25/analog radios. And those have all been phased out at this point. The newest lines are the APX or Apex radios. And those are the two. This is an APX 8000, and I'm not sure what model it is. Both of these require mortgages on your house. So yeah, yeah, that's for sure. So these are, you know, really, really nice and expensive radios. All this is the P25 lineup. So let's move on to the mobile side real quick. The three most common DMR radios, I think, in use, really with two of them being the most common mobiles. XPR 5550, XPR 4550. 5550Es are still made in a current line. 4550s have been discontinued, but they're still prevalent. Nearly the same radios, both either 1 to 20 watt or 20 to 40 watt. As a matter of fact, the comment in the chat mentioned band split. Power level is another one in the mobiles. There's usually 2 power levels available in every model. They're either 1 to 20 watt or 20 to 40 watt. Color display, black and white LCD display here, but nearly the same otherwise. This does have Bluetooth programming in it. This does not. And then this is a XPR 2500, which is also analog DMR. It is a 99 channel radio. These are 1,000 channel radios. But you know, excellent little radios. Again, the caveat with the code plugs, if you have an XPR 5550E low power, it uses a different code plug than the 5550E high power. Code plug looks identical every single way through, except the power level is different. So you have to copy paste or start with a plug that supports that. And since we talked about P25, these are kind of the two legacy and current mobile lines for P25 in the Motorola. The XTL line, which is still very prevalent and widely used, especially in ham. And these are the new Apex mobiles there. All right, so that's kind of the overall view on Motorola. This is a key chart that's got some basic things about some of the mobiles. I'm sorry, some of the, it's got mobiles and HTs in it. Honestly, there's really only two things to be super concerned about when we look for ham usage of these commercial Motorola radios. One, as mentioned in the chat, the band split and power. You want to make sure that you get a radio that fulfills your need there. And then two, look for the capabilities of the radio. If you want a 99 channel radio, I'm going to show you a way you can actually use that on the Rocky Mountain Ham Network, no problem, and get all the channels, we have way more than 99 channels. I can't remember what it is, but we can get it all to work. Or, you know, buy a 4550, 5550, 6550, 7550, and you can have them all in there natively. So make sure the radio works where you want it and with the right power, and make sure it can hold the things that you want it to hold. Here's one area that really sets Motorola apart, or commercial from other ham manufacturers. The accessories are really, really cool. Bluetooth remote speaker mic and a flashlight. That's right. It's got a flashlight in the bottom of it. And, you know, this pairs up to like the 7550 or the 5550. It's got an amazing range for Bluetooth. And it plays cool music when you power them on. You've got, you know, everybody's got headsets and things like that. On the screen, I'll show you, like, you know, the regular microphone. This is kind of the default microphone you get with most of the Motorola DMRs, or you can buy the upgraded lit up keypad microphones. We don't really need the keypads for much these days, but the microphone is a solid, well lit microphone that's nice, and you can drive the channel and zone from the front. This stuff, all these features up in here are a lineup what they call critical wireless. They have amazing amount of features there. This device here is a neck loop that you can wear. This is more Secret Service kind of stuff, right? You wear this under your clothes around your neck, and it inductively couples to essentially a hearing aid in that you can wear in one ear and pick up the signals and listen. And this thing is not only incredibly comfortable, but you can listen clearly to the radio in a very noisy environment, i.e. event support, ham fests, you know, things like that, out on Oxcom missions, and you can still hear around you. It doesn't block out the sound. Don't get narrow plasma TV. It picks those up really well. I've noticed that as well. And then when you move into the mobiles, the main one is what's called the handheld control head. Everyone, the hams have all had remote mount front panels. Motorola's taken it a step further. That is literally like, and I don't have one here with me, but that is the handheld. It looks like a large microphone.
Looks like a Mr. Potato Head.
Mr. Potato Head, as it's affectionately known. Yeah, it's got an LCD screen that mimics what would be on the front panel. It's got all your buttons. It has a microphone. It has a speaker in it, and it has the keypad. It is everything all in one. The radio sits back somewhere else. Costs as much as the radio. That's true, Robert. That's true. Now, there are also options that are a little more familiar, like the ham lines, where you can just simply remote the front panel of the radio. and mount it, you know, a traditional front panel and hook your microphone in the front there like we do with a lot of the more current ham radio models. And you'll notice that is just the same one. That is literally a front panel removed from a 5550 body with the remote kit. So a lot of options.
And James, when you're looking at used commercial mobiles, you might want to take a look at, that's not me. What is the speaker on this thing? You look at Mr. Potato Head over there and you think, where's the speaker?
True.
But the audio comes out of little channels around the keys, and it's really good audio.
It's quite
These
good.
commercial radios have a little speaker about the size of a quarter, maybe a $50.
Yeah.
And it sounds great. Some of the ham rigs are okay, but the audio isn't the same.
Yeah, it's true. The audio quality is definitely a noticeable improvement.
And that's big.
So let's step back away from all the modern stuff for just one moment, because there's a lot of value in some of the older gear that's on the market and some of the uses for it. This is a MaxTrack, a Motorola MaxTrack, dime a dozen. These things are, you can buy these things at HamFest for $10. You can buy them on eBay. People give these away. They're all over. It's the same Motorola rugged quality, even though they're much, much older. Just great radios. I actually have one sitting at home up in the corner that when occasionally we have event support for an event I used to run. We had some iGate holes, so I've got a little MaxTrack and an old AEA PK232 running as an iGate, as a looks like a 15-watt iGate there to fill in a hole. They make really, really good packet radios. Matter of fact, at home in my home shack, I have a Radius and a Radius GM300 and a Cantronics, and I have those three wired. This is my 1200 baud VHF, my 9600 baud UHF, connected to the same TNC, and that's what I use for packet and WinLink and things at my home station. But there are some intricacies to the older radios. For one, yep, the rib box, radio interface box. You have to have a rib box to program these older radios. Yeah, so I was going to get to that. So you can find ribless cables that are sold. You can find aftermarket rib boxes. You can find schematics to build your own. I think they probably mostly all work. The good news is if they don't work, they don't usually screw up your radio. They just don't work. So if you got one and it doesn't work, try something else. This is the original Motorola rib. It takes a 9-volt battery. It was transistor state of the art when transistors were state of the art. So, and then the other caveat to the software for most of these radios is called RSS. It is Motorola property. It's long since discontinued. I've been informed that the copyrights have been dropped on this. So if you can find this, you can own it without being in violation of that. It's all DOS software. It all runs on DOS. So you either have to have true DOS or you have to have something like Windows 95, which has actually got DOS under the hood. It will not run in the emulated DOS stuff. So it will not run, and it has to be 16-bit at the most, 8 or 16-bit. DOS, there's free DOS out there, 6.2, and if you don't ever plug it into the internet, a Windows 95 box will work fine. Free DOS is real easy to install and use, but it's a full-blown thing. It's programming, alignment, everything in here. Yes. And I'm going to share one tip about this. I talked about out-of-band operation. There are a lot of these radios that come right to the ham edge, but don't quite include the ham edge. You can drop them into the ham band. And in RSS, the way you do that, you're in the change, create, code plug data, and you're changing the frequency, you hold the shift key down. Correct. Hold the shift key down for everything but the decimal point. On the screen, you're going to be typing pound at 3, all the symbols up there. And then when you hit enter, it's going to say this is out of band, and it's going to change to the frequency you wanted it in the RSS, and it works. Does that guarantee the radio is going to operate properly in that? It does not. So you know, honestly, most of these radios are so close. What you're going to find is that they don't produce harmonics and birdies, but the PA becomes a little bit out of band. So you usually lose a little power. That's usually the biggest thing. If you want to do it right and be a good neighbor to everybody, you should have the radio checked on an analyzer after you've programmed it. Yeah, so that's the other thing you have to be careful of when you operate them out of band. And the reason that is that a lot of the old GM300 era radios have a lookup table in their EEPROM, and they know what to adjust the PA for based on that lookup table. And when you're out of band, the lookup table is false, so it just defaults to full bore, which is it can be okay. It can also burn out your PA depending on the usage there. Couple of quick tips on the radios. If you're looking for a radio for something like this, for packet, number one, the first thing you want to do is look at what's the logic board and the option board. 5-pin connector, 16-pin connector. They do different things. You can get multiple versions. But before we do that, let's talk about this. You can buy these kind of power cords all day long from Amazon, eBay, everything else. And guess what? You can buy them with the red and the black in either position. So just be really careful. And here's an easy way to remember this. And this goes beyond radio programming. The source where the energy is coming from, your power supply, should have the hot lead protected. The red lead should be protected. That's how all Motorola mobiles are expecting. They're expecting plus on the exposed pin, because if you were to, unplug this and it was the other polarity of connector and it touched something ground, you create a short. So just remember, positive is always protected on the source. Buy that cable and it will fit the radio. It will power all the Motorola radios. That is actually true all the way up through, that connector is still used. Here's a 5550, a current model radio, same connector. They are, they're the same connector all the way through and through. So just be careful of that. Now, I talked about band splits, models, option boards, power levels. Like, there's so many variations, especially these old radios. Repeaterbuilder.com, repeater-builder.com. Kevin Kuster, I believe I pronounce his name, owns this site. Folks like our friendly neighborhood K2AD in the room here have articles still up that donated on this site. Yeah. This is not just a Motorola site. This is an amazing commercial radio site. You will find service manuals, model number decoders. That's another way you can figure out the split, the power, everything else. Everything under the planet you want to know about older commercial radios can be found on Repeater Builder. Here's an example of a model nomenclature that shows you how to decode. I don't know exactly which line this one is for, but it shows you exactly the model number on the bottom of the radio, how to decode it. Motrack, yeah, I knew this was old. I knew this was old. So, okay, that little sidetrack there on the older radios. They have some great value and they're dirt cheap. You want a really reliable packet radio that'll never die. Those things are cheap. So let's go back a little bit to the DMR side of things. Okay, talked about caveats at the beginning. We're going to get into all kinds of them now that we're back to CPS. There are two major lines of customer programming software for DMR for Motorola. 16.0 and now the 2.0. Motorola changed recently, in the last couple of years, the entire strategy on how radios were programmed, how firmware was managed, how what they gave away versus what they made a subscription and licensed and all that. And the CPSs have to be used with the proper firmware version in the radio. 16.0 build 828 was the latest old CPS that was released, and it remains still the current version for the older side of the house with firmware. And then 2.0 is used with firmwares that are 2.0 to 2.10 and then up. After 2.10, they changed the firmware nomenclature again, and now they've got I can't remember, like they say 2010. They changed the numbering in the firmware. Why does this matter to you? You have to be a little careful because the way firmware worked in 16.0, you would go to your Motorola portal, your paid subscription portal, and you could just download these EXE packages of firmware. You install them, and they go into the magic place on your CPS directory, and then they become available in CPS to upgrade your firmware. And those were free to anybody that had a legitimate Motorola, portal access. And that continued as they rebuilt 2.0. That same model continued up to firmware 2.10. Above 2.10, they changed it because the way CPS 2.0 works is it actually calls the mothership, and it's always got the latest firmware available in it if your radio qualifies. So there are as many opinions about how this all works and there was a lot of scare about don't go to this because you'll have to pay for your firmware upgrades from here on out. Well, as it turns out, it's actually not firmware, it's features in the radio that they're going to make you pay for. What I would recommend is if you want to learn more about the exact combination of firmware and code and CPS that you're interested in, ignore all of the chats and forums and everything else and find a ham-friendly dealer that has somebody that knows what's really going on with this stuff and ask them. That is the easiest way to do this. 2.0 is not scary. If you buy a brand new radio, this radio shipped to me with 2.09 firmware or something, I cannot read it or write it in 16. I have to use 2.0. I'm going to show you 2.0 and 16 here. Yeah. 16.
But you can open a code plug that from 16.0, you can open it in 2.0,
Correct.
and it does the conversion, a one-way conversion.
Yeah, so Mark just reminded us you can open an older code plug in CPS 2.0 and it will convert it to something capable one time. Then it would no longer be, if you write it to the radio then has to use CPS 2.0 from that point forward. You can't go backwards on that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the difference between the hardware and the software features in the key. They call them EID entitlements. And some of them are software based, so they go into your CPS, and some of them are hardware based and they go into the device. A good example of a software based one is a wideband entitlement key. These are commercial radios, so they are everything from top to bottom. The radio, the software, everything is designed for 12.5 kilohertz narrowband channels. As hams, of course, that's not too useful to us because almost all of our old analog stuff is wideband. So as a Motorola customer, we can go in and take a little course. It's really watching a video. And then once we have completed that 15-minute video, it says we promise not to do anything bad and operate wideband in commercial areas, et cetera, et cetera. You are certified to download wideband entitlement keys. You install that in your CPS, and then from that point, that CPS on that computer can program wideband into radio, any radio. Wideband entitlement keys are free. Now, I'm going to talk about some other, like a hardware key, an audio leveling key specifically is one that's kind of interesting to our world. It's almost free. Those are, somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 or $4 per radio one time, and it adds the key forever. This is probably mostly unreadable from everyone, so we'll zoom in a little bit. This is what 16.0 looks like. This is the whole, This is the whole, with one code plug open and a kind of a zoom. Along the top, we're going to have some things like device paste roam lists, scan lists, and you know, in 16.0, and actually this is true with 2.0 also, there's a lot of complicated things in these code plugs. And sometimes it's a field we understand, but we don't understand what all the options in the field are. If you highlight the field or hover, down here in the bottom, there is usually a very good explanation about what all the features are and what they can do. You don't need to open help files. That's one really nice thing about this. You can just hover on the feature and tell you the admit criteria. This is a big one that confuses people all the time. Here it tells you what is channel free, what is correct PL, what does color code free mean, you know, and it tells you exactly what each one of those features does. So use this as you get confused, or you even if you're exploring your code plug and want to learn more, phenomenal helps built right in there that you don't have to go look up a separate help file. Now, CPS 2.0. Anyone on a boo for 2.0?
Ooh.
2.0, again, remember, this is moving towards commercial. This is aimed at this. The hams were not in mind when they wrote any of the software, when they designed this. CPS 2.0 is slow. It's really slow compared to 16.
Not as slow as Motorola, or Kenwood,
It's
excuse
not
me.
as slow, yeah. Unfortunately, they dropped one really neat feature from CPS 2.0 that I actually used a lot. You can't do Bluetooth programming anymore. They really want you to do Wi-Fi and over-the-air programming because that's what all the commercial people are doing. They're not programming one or two. I'm sorry? Yeah, that's right. So Bluetooth, in order to put Bluetooth functionality in these radios, they had to pay royalty for the license to use it. Another reason to get rid of it. So unfortunately, once you're at 2.0, in the ham world, we're pretty much back to programming with a cable. It is what it is. A little bit of a zoomed in thing so we can actually read it. The layout's almost identical. You know, some of the menus are buried a little deeper, but you still have your general, you know, you've got your contacts, your receive group lists, all the things that we need in order to program. Now, 16 is still a very prevalent thing. It's what most of us are still using for most of our radios, and I don't think that's going to change. We're going to stay, you know, that's going to be into the future for quite a while. Mention Bluetooth programming. It is really cool to be able to just turn your radios on, sit back on the couch, and not have to mess with cables and programming and stuff like that. So we're going to go over Bluetooth, doing it right, just a little bit here. This is doing it wrong. Doug, the only thing I can tell you is it's stolen off the internet. All right, so the first thing we want to do for Bluetooth programming, and this I'm showing you on an XPR 7550. It works the same on the 5550. By the way, no Bluetooth in the 6550 or the 4550. You know, I mentioned earlier the 50 after that. They're not the only line. So the 70, like the 6550, there's a 6300 that has no keypad and no display, I think. So, you know, there's line, you know, there are various features in each of the lineup. The first thing we want to do is go into your main menu. There's a Bluetooth option. We want to go to My Status and turn it on. Once My Status is on, that turns the Bluetooth radio on in the radio. Now we go over to Windows. And, you know, I cannot remember. I know most of these things can be had or found through the control panel. I can never remember which. Microsoft loves to move this stuff around, and I never remember it. I've gotten to the habit now where if you have the little Windows key on your keyboard, just tap it and start typing Bluetooth, and it takes you right to where you want to be. So you want to be on Bluetooth and other devices window. And what you'll see here, you may or may not have things in here. Here's one thing I think is a little unfortunate about Windows. If you don't have Bluetooth capability in your machine, it still looks like this. And it still lets you push all the buttons, and it just fails to find stuff. So you may have to just be a little careful. Make sure you actually have Bluetooth before you get mad and throw your radio. You may not have it. If you got a modern laptop, it probably has it. If you have a modern desktop, it probably doesn't, and you need a little dongle. If you throw the radio, it's a Motorola, it's okay, it'll probably survive. So we'll want to choose Add Bluetooth or Other Device at the top there. And it'll bring up a window like this, asking you what you want to add. And you'll notice that none of the options say Motorola radio. They don't say anything about radio at all. The option you want to choose here is the top one, Bluetooth. Mice, keyboards, pens, audio, other kinds. You want to choose this top device. When you choose that top device, I missed a slide. I missed a slide. In the menu item on your radio, you have to make the radio findable via Bluetooth. And so what you want to do is choose this menu, Find Me. You want to click Find Me and then click OK. Oh, and my radio had it off, but it'll turn it on. Bluetooth is on, and now it should say Finding Me. And up on your Windows screen, you will see this. You will see your radio, wherever you put in that ID, the general ID field, you'll see it show up, and it'll say connecting, and it'll give you a pin. And as soon as this happens, your radio will have a thing saying, you know, pair, do you want to pair? And it'll show that same number, and it'll have an accept and a reject. Yeah, I've been rejected. Okay. All you got to do is click accept on the radio and click connect here. And you don't have to do them, I mean, there's no real time limit or anything, just do them both, you know, as soon as you can grab them. And you get a paired. That's real simple, right? That part doesn't usually confuse people, and it doesn't usually fail. The next step is where people get confused, because just because it's paired, it is not connected to anything. So thank you, Windows, for being confusing. Now, this is the part. And so, by the way, up to that step, you only have to do that once ever. Then that radio and that computer can talk. You don't ever have to do that again. This part you have to do each time you want to use Bluetooth programming. Under Devices and Printers, which you'll find in the control panel, this window will come up, and you'll see, I mean, I've got all kinds of junk attached to this computer. But you'll see I got a cell phone looking thing that is actually the radio. And again, you'll find the radio and the ID, it's whatever's in that field. It's not in your radio ID field. This is in the name, the radio name field. You want to click on that, connect using an access point. That is the key to making this whole thing work. As soon as you do that, the radio will beep, and you'll see Bluetooth connected on the screen of the radio. Now you can actually go into CPS here, click on the Bluetooth icon, and that's fine. That's all you got to do. Click on that, you're ready to go. You can now read, write, and clone your radio. You cannot do firmware. You cannot install entitlements, things like all that. It's just read, write program, you know, read, write, clone. And you're done. That'll work. At that point, the radio is connected and working, and you can use Bluetooth. Personally, when I update I have 3 5550s in my truck. I turn them on, and then I go back and sit in the warm house, and I do all of my changes and everything, and I write my code plugs out Bluetooth from the living room to the garage. It's pretty neat when it's like cold out in the winter time. And that's all there is to it. Now, as soon as you reboot the radio disconnect, back here in this screen, this is going to disconnect. So if you want to do it again next time, you just start from this stage. Connect using access point, Bluetooth, and the code, and you're ready to go. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. We went through hardware. both new and old. We went through a lot of the caveats with firmware and things like that. One of the main titles of this course is DMR programming, so I want to dive into the code plug now. Mark is going to get into a lot of the code plug planning and things like that, which are applicable to all commercial plugs. I'm going to go specifically into Motorola CPS and kind of walk you through what's the most important pieces of each of these things. We're going to do it in 16.0. Everything I say here is pretty applicable to 2.0. There's really nothing, there's no catches that you need to figure out to move into 2.0. It looks and is labeled nearly the same. It's just slower. So here on, here I've got I'm in 2.0. I have a high power 5550E. This is one of the sample RMHAM code plugs loaded right now. And I want to walk you through the things that are the most important and the things that you generally need to get the radio up and working properly on both DMR and analog. So we're going to just walk down the left side settings here on the menus here and go through what's important. So in general settings, this radio name, this is the field I was talking about that shows up in that Bluetooth programming. Whatever you type in here is what's going to show up in the Bluetooth. This name is not critical in any way, shape, or form. It's not used for anything. Typically, all it is what's displayed on the screen for a moment when the radio boots up. You can leave this blank. You can put whatever you want in here. Doesn't matter. I tend to usually put my call sign and whatever radio ID I have in it so that I can click the radio on and be like, oh, I know what ID's in it. But it's up to you. The welcome image, of course, you have to have that one in there because the big Motorola M is a boring image to have in there. So if anybody's interested, the sample code plugs all for Motorola all have the correct image loaded in them. But I have the pixel images for all the models if you're interested. Supporting the club with an image there. Radio ID. Doug really likes when he sees 999 show up in the C bridge, and that call stays locally on the local repeater that the person is using and doesn't route anywhere, and it throws all kinds of errors. Please put the proper ID in there. This is the one Mark talked about earlier that you got from radio.net. Now, there are a lot of settings in here as you walk down this menu. You can learn about them by clicking on them. We recommend you leave everything in here exactly the same, whether it be from a Rocky Mountain ham code plug or a generic code plug. A lot of this stuff you don't have to worry about. What is important? Well, the power level. There's power level high, power level low. Adjust it to your liking. Here it looks like I've got 27.5 watts and 44 watts is set as low and high power. You know, some of this is preference, home channel, right? In some of that, if you want to decide what channel you want the radio to come up on when it boots, you can set that stuff. It's not all that important. So power, the radio ID. The next one that I like to talk about is the talk permit tone here. Talk permit tone. When you hit the button, the PTT button on your DMR radio and you hear either a chirp or a solid tone, we all know that that is the, if we hear the chirp, that says, yep, I can talk. If we hear the solid tone, often called bonking, we know that our channel's not free and clear or we're not reaching the repeater. That talk permit tone really is really only valuable in digital, but you can, analog and digital, you can have it. If you hit it in analog, it just beeps and says go no matter what. This always just tells you go. If your admit criteria is set right. Personally, I like to set this to digital only because in analog, depending on your radio and depending on the receiver on the other side, sometimes people can hear a little bit of that chirp in your, in your transmitted audio. Not a big deal. Total preference. I leave mine off I leave it in digital only. It's just something to be aware of. And then the last really important one here, I think I got a little out of order here. You want to have your AGCs for digital and analog checked. Your automatic gain control. That really helps level the audio out and set the right audio levels for the system. So I think everyone's heard somebody that you can barely hear on DMR and the other ones that blow your ears off, you know. This is step one in making sure that that's set right. So other than that, the rest of it's either leave it alone or it's a preference. Yes? Okay, so good tip from the audience here. Volume offset will allow you to lower the tones, and the EOSS folks recommend a -6 value for that, so that the beep isn't quite as obnoxious when you press a button. Thanks, that's a great tip. As we move on down the menus here, I'm going to stop at accessories, and this is the big magic button right here that I talked about earlier, and that is ignition sense. So you can see disable ignition only, follow ignition only, on-off button or ignition or PTT disabled. If you have the radio set to follow ignition only, that's where the radio will not turn on regardless of all of your efforts unless you have 12 volts on that ignition sense pin. So on-off or ignition is usually a safer bet. That way you can use the button or ignition sense. Either one will turn the radio on and off. That's the only option I'm going to recommend that you change in this. If you're using an RMHAM code plug sample, all of the recommended gain starts and everything else have already been set to the recommended defaults. I'd recommend copying them. You can, you type a squelch. There's a lot of different things in here. Buttons. So buttons, this is exactly what it says. It's going to tell you what your button, you can assign your buttons to do different things. And it's really, really flexible. There's a lot of buttons on here. If you look at this section here, P1, P2, P3, P4. My cameraman has left me. These match up. Can you bring use the small one, John? Or can you? You'll see right on the front of the mobile here along the bottom, P1 through P4. So you'll find that those buttons are on the mobile. They change from mobile to mobile. But as you scroll down here into like the accessory buttons, you'll find there is a solid button, a 1-dot button on the side of the radio. I don't know if you can zoom in far enough. Okay. On there, you'll see the matching corresponding thing. Sometimes there's blue buttons, sometimes there's orange buttons, 1-dot button, 2-dot button. So it matches the physical symbology on the radio in your CPS. So that the top button on here. I can't remember if that one's that's settable as well, but I don't remember. Monitor. Okay. Okay. Defaults to monitor for squelch, and I thought that. Oh, and I have the wrong plug loaded to match the HTs, which is why I don't see that in there. If you load a 7550 or 6550, you'll find the match, all the buttons match in the CPS with the radio. But you can adjust what those do with a short press or a long press. So this is where you set all that stuff up. Scanning, turning your power on and off, things like that, nuisance delete, repeater and talk around. I'm going to get to that. Here's the 1-dot, 2-dot, no dots for the mobiles. Honestly, this is a set it to your preference kind of a section. You really got to find, if you look in each of these like short press, no dot button brightness, there is all of these things that it can be. So it's worth, you know, on a snowy Saturday afternoon sometime when you got nothing better to do, flip through, look at the things, you know, think about your radio usage and what you missed or what you had to go into a menu and use often. If you're in a menu changing things, it probably should be adjusted to, you know, set to a button if you do it often. All right, so we're going to move down now into the actual guts of programming it for radios. And we're going to skip, so signaling systems and all this stuff, we're going to skip through all of that and move into contacts. Just leave all this other stuff alone. It's mostly for commercial systems that are set up for trunking and things like that. And we're going to move into contacts. Now, under contacts, there's the most important one that we want to deal with is digital contacts. Digital contacts is exactly the thing that we're the most familiar with as far as what shows up on the screen when someone transmits to you. It's the phone book. But you'll notice in this particular plug, all of the ones that I have little people by them. These are all group contacts. You can have individual contacts and you have group contacts. Why do we have those? Well, in the individual contacts, remember in a commercial system, maybe we want the public works guy to talk to the other public works guy and they don't want to tie up the whole system and have everybody hear that. These radios are capable of making that call, one ID to another. We discourage that use because it ties up the entire system for those, you know, just those. Since we don't have a trunk system with many repeaters for those folks to share, it ties up that whole talk group, you know, that whole part of our system. So we use group contacts in here for basically access control for our receive. And we'll get into that. Mark's going to get into that much greater in his section. But what we have here is we have it's probably about time to let everybody wake back up again. So this is actually a good point because from here on out it's kind of deeper programming. So how long are we? 15-minute break right now, and we will finish this up and let Mark jump into the Kenwood section. Thanks. Need to get moving along so that we can finish up in time or as close to time, please. All right, so prior to the break, I started into all the detailed sections of the code plug. We're running a little bit behind time, and I think some of the sections there are really generic based on code plugs, and probably a lot of folks are familiar with it. That being said, there is an entire slide set behind the scenes here that you're not seeing today that will be posted on the website that have all these detailed sections. So if you've got some questions you want to refer to on sections that I'm going to slide over during the presentation, please see the posted PDFs afterwards. I am going to spend a little bit of time before we turn over to Mark and go on to the Kenwoods talking about a couple of sections of the Motorola code plugs that often need some extra attention or explanation. So with that, we'll slide back to CPS here. And one key I wanted to point out on, and this is really actually more applicable to CPS 2.0 than the 16. When you load a plug, for some reason, CPS 2.0 decides that it would like to load a blank RAS key, which is an encryption key. And so you'll load your plug, make all your changes, go to write, and it doesn't work. And it'll say your RAS key value can't be set to 0. So you just need to go in there and delete your RAS key, the security key, since we're not using encryption, and then everything is fine. So that's one sort of gotcha for CPS 2.0. Another major difference with 2.0 is you can only have one code plug open at a time, but you can have multiple CPS 2.0s open, and then you can copy paste between the instances with different plugs. On a positive note, you can copy and paste many more fields in 2.0 than you could with 16.0, so it's actually a little easier there. As I said, I've got recommendations on my back channel slides here that you can find in the PDF posts if you want to see what recommended values are for the things. I'm going to skip over that today. Here's where I'm going to go back to, though, starting in, there's a couple of minor things. Admit criteria. This one is really, really critical, and you'll find that in the channel. It is in every channel. So for example, it's in the same place. In a digital channel, you'll see that we use admit criteria color code free, and then the in-call criteria follow admit criteria. The reason we use admit criteria color code free, on the Motorola radios, when you push the PTT button down, if you have selected color code free, the radio actually communicates very briefly with the repeater to make sure that it is actually free. And then, if it is, it gives you the chirp to allow your talk permit tone. What does this do? Number one, it makes sure that the channel is open. But number two, it is a kind of an unofficial, I'm in the range of the repeater and can hear it. So that's kind of a nice little feature to leave on there to make sure the repeater's hearing you and you're not just, either bonked or chirped and believe that you're talking on the repeater when you're not. So we choose color code free as the recommended thing there. I want to talk about admit criteria on analog channels and a common mistake that folks make when building these code plugs. When you have an analog channel set, you always want to use always as your admit criteria. So you'll see if we slide down to one of these, you'll see that the admit criteria here is set to always. If you'll see that there's three choices: always, channel free, or correct PL. A lot of times people say, oh, channel free, that sounds like a great selection, right? The radio won't let me double with someone else. Well, guess what happens when you set channel free and you're on a repeater? The channel is never free unless the repeater is not transmitting. So when the other guy lets go and you get your courtesy tone from the repeater, your radio is locked out until the repeater PTT drops. You cannot immediately come back. It is really frustrating with quick key people because you'll never get your chance back in the repeater. So when you're on an analog channel, make sure admit criteria is set to always. And when you're on a digital channel, we prefer you set it to color code free to give you the best chance there. Okay, the next one I wanted to talk about very briefly here is channel pool. You'll see that is always available on every code plug right at the top there, and you'll see it's usually empty. What is channel pool for and why is it useful? Well, it was designed originally for public safety where we're doing trunked repeater systems. You just dump all the trunked repeater data in there, and it's a big pool, and now the radio knows it can use any of those channels, and you sort out how you're going to use them with other features of the radio. Why is that important to us? Well, remember, I talked about the SL300, the XPR 2500. This is a two-zone 99 channel radio. You can't even put the RMHAM, just Colorado alone, you can't even fit in this radio. If you were to divide it up in the way the sample code plugs are for zones and channels, they won't all fit. Two zones, right? So how do we get around that with a radio like this? This is still a super useful radio. We take all of the channels, all of the UHF channels, for example, and put them in the channel pool. There is not a 99 channel limit in the channel pool. They will all fit there. Then we use one of our 99 channels to create a roam channel. And we create a roam group and a single channel, and it will roam. Anything that's in your roam group that's marked in that roam group in the channel pool will then become a roamable or scannable, depending on how you have it set, and so you have now got 138 channels of repeaters in the channel pool. You've created a roam group with one roam channel. You have used one of your 99 channels in this 99 channel radio, and it works across the entire RMHAM system in roam.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Doug,
Because I think I know this, and I'm confused. So probably others are confused a little bit. I think what you're saying is pick a talk group like Northern 721, put all of the Northern channels in the roam list, and now your radio, when you go to that, it's going to find the nearest 721, and you used one position.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yep, thanks for the clarification. Yep, so you would make a roam list for, say, 721 north, and then anything that's tagged in there out of the channel pool will roam, and you've used one spot. Yep, I'm sorry? Up to 15 channels, right? There is still that limitation. And that way you can put the entire system in roam for each talk group, and you've used, only one for north, one for south, one for central, one, et cetera. And then you can use a few for your analog channels, and you can easily fit everything that you fit in here, in there, with the exception that roam is needed. Okay, scan lists. Scan lists are a little more clear, right? They are exactly what they say they are. When you turn scan on, anything in that scan list, the radio is going to flip through and scan all the time and break squelch whenever a signal is there. What is a pitfall of scan lists? A lot of folks so they'll pick north, for example, and everything in north is in a scan list. Well, north contains Rocky Mountain wide channels, and it contains north channels. So now we have two folks using their radio. They're both on scan, and they're both scanning north. But their channel selector, one of them set to Rocky Mountain wide, the other one set to north. That's what they're going to transmit on, even though they're hearing everything. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so you can set up scan to transmit back on the priority of what you had originally set, or you can set it to transmit back on what it was last heard. But it's a real common mistake for folks to leave it set to transmit on the priority channel, and what ends up happening is you have two one-way conversations. So thank you for that clarification. That's a good point. So you can, either adjust your scan list or adjust your priority so that you're actually transmitting back where you think you are. And then the conversation is whole, and it makes a lot more sense to a lot more people. Okay, roam. I wanted to talk very briefly about how roam works, because it is not, people think roam and they think cell phone. That's not how it works. So the RSSI threshold level, which is settable either independently in a channel, or it's settable, we come down here to roam lists, you can see it right here, RSSI threshold, or you can use per site. What that means is, and that value of -91 is where we recommend you set your threshold for the Rocky Mountain ham system. When your radio, all of these repeaters, the DMR repeaters are beaconing, X amount of time. They send out a little quick beacon, and your radio receives that and determines the relative signal strength, the received signal strength. The first repeater it hears that's above 91, it's going to use as the roam repeater. Now it's going to stay on that repeater, using that repeater, regardless of what it hears, until that repeater is no longer -91. So you're going to stay on that repeater, even if you hear -80s and -70s, you're going to stay on that first repeater you locked onto until that repeater becomes lower than -91. Then it will revote, pick the best one, and go. That is not a problem, but it makes putting the threshold in proper. If you set -124, you're going to stay on a repeater you can't even talk on probably, and are garbled and everything else. So use an appropriate RSSI level, and you'll be in good shape there. Also, when you do, let's go back to the channel list here. You'll notice on a DMR zone like this, DMR South, let's go to South. You'll notice that and I have scan lists set for these zones like South. I do not have roam lists set there. If you set the roam list right here, it will roam all the time. And you will not, your radio will not stay put where you think it will. It will move off and it will roam all the time onto that. So instead, use a scan list if you want to scan all those channels. And then when you build your roam list, you build, here's the South roam. You put all the, you just put one single channel in there. Just pick one of them. Doesn't matter which one. I usually pick the one that might be closest to your home location or something like that. Yeah, the one you want it to start with. It will start there and then it will roam with everything that's in the roam list set below down here. And that one channel is all you do. And you're on that channel, it's roaming between everything in the South roam list. So don't set roam in your main zone list or it'll roam that all the time and it won't stay put. So just another gotcha there. Okay, in the presentation, there's a wrapping up section. This wrapping up section shows if you're going to build a code plug from scratch and or modify one. These are the settings you want to basically go through to make sure you have right and you'll be good on the system. I talked about admit criteria. The other one to make sure is if you're in analog channel, make sure you set the bandwidth to 25. It defaults to 12.5 on every channel. And what's the result of that? You're going to hear really quiet audio because people are deviating way less than they should be for that channel. Make sure you set your bandwidth on analog to 25. As long as it's a wideband channel, which most are around here. Last thing here as I wrap this up, remember that when you read, if you read your own radio plug, you can change it all you want and write it back with write. But if you use like the sample code plug or you use someone else's code plug, the model number has to match exactly. And then you use, if the serial number is different, which it will be for a different radio, use the clone button instead of the write button. And that will allow you to put the plug in to a different serial number, different radio that's exactly the same model number. If you try to use model numbers different, you're going to have to generate a new plug with copy paste or a new donor plug. And that kind of wraps up the high points of the Motorola section. All of the details about each section of that are in the slides that'll be posted to the website after. Already posted. Thanks, John. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark to go over the planning in Kenwood.
Okay, I think we'll get started and find out who's here is interested in the Kenwood or the Kenwood radios. You don't count. Okay, so what I'm, in order to save some time, I'm kind of curious. We've got 3 different series, and I know the 5000 series and the 3000 series are the most popular. Which series is everybody or most people interested in? 5. If you maybe on the website, type into chat if you're interested in anything else.
We have a 3000 in the chat so far.
Okay, so I'm not going to go with the 1300. We do see a 3000 in the chat. So I'm going to be a little quicker to go through here, and I can answer some questions. Again, there's a lot of details in the slides on what you can do, but I want to save some time so we can go ahead and do the lab. So getting started with the Kenwood, the models that I will bring up are the 1000 series, the 3000 series, and the 5000 series. I don't plan on going through much of the programming software for the 1000 series. I can talk about it if there are some questions. James alluded to it earlier on programming cables and made some points about it. There's different cables for different series of radios. There's actually different cables for even the same series. But the one thing to keep in mind when you get a cable, it's recommended you'd use a Kenwood cable, but there are some third-party cables available. And be careful, if you order a serial one rather than one that's got a UART and high speed, you'll want to throw your radio out. Again, you can throw a Kenwood radio. It lasts like the Motorola radio. But I remember when James got his Kenwood 5000, and it would take 12.5 minutes to program it. And he was pretty frustrated with it. So it just happened to be that he ended up with a serial cable rather than an aftermarket a cable that had high-speed capability. The software, again, it runs on Motorola. I do run it in a virtual machine. Again, use it at your own risk. But the one thing that I don't recommend, I have never got it work, never put a radio feature license from a virtual machine into the transceiver. It fails and you have a good chance of losing that feature. It's one thing if it's like a Bluetooth option that may be $10 or $11, but if it's a P25 option that's several $100s, you really don't want to lose that. So that's just a recommendation that I get from firsthand experience. When I first got the programming software, I was warned about it, even putting on a virtual machine and licensing it, that I may lose the wideband entitlement. There's different, I'm going to go through the different things that come with the programming software. And with the Kenwood software, unlike with the Motorola, that you've got CPS 2.0 and 16.0 that will work with all of the XPR and SL series. There's a different programming software for the different series of radios that you can get, but it will work across the whole series of radios. And I'm just, the NX 1000, there's a lot of different models. I'm going to refer to these. It's just the 1000 or the 3000 and not go into the individual models. But basically with the Kenwood 1000, and there's a couple samples up here that we can look at of all the different series. There's different face plates that you can get. There's different antennas. There's a UHF, VHF model. It does support FM analog. And when you purchase it, you've got to decide, do you want NXDN or DMR? And you can't change it once it's there unless you order. You can get a feature key, again, to put in the radio that will allow you to switch it. The 3000 is, I know from talking to Doug, where I get some of the radios from CCC, the groups that he sells most to hams are the 3000 and the 5000 series. The 3000 has a mobile and a portable option that you can get. Again, VHF, UHF, supports analog, and it will support DMR and NXDN, but you can only have one band active at a time within your code plug. And you may want to get, if you want more channels, that 260, you can buy a feature key for 1,000 channels. The 5000 series, I think, is the, I'm not aware of the 6,000 or 7,000 that may be coming out. The 5000 series is got a lot of features, a lot of copy. You can use different heads. You can have up to 3 transceivers in one head. You can have 3 transceivers and have heads in the front of the vehicle, heads in the back of the vehicle. You've got a Mr. Potato Head. So there's also a lot of options, a lot of different model numbers when you order it. And if you want to find out more about it, you can contact Doug and his company, CCC, and be more than willing to help you with the different models, and they are a ham-friendly dealer. The high points on the 5000 series, again, will support VHF and UHF, FM analog, and it will support 2 digital modes at one time. By default, it comes with analog and NXDN. If you want to do DMR, that's an entitlement key. The entitlement key is not very expensive. If you want to do P25, you have another entitlement key or license, and that's a little more expensive on the radio. This one also will support 4,000 channels if you want to buy an additional license. It comes stock with 1,000, and that's been plenty for me. I'm up probably to close to 300 channels in my radio. And all of these, you can take a look with some. There's a 3,000, the mobiles up here, so there's 3,000 portables. You can take a look when we're all done to figure out, just the different models that are available. The programming software, the disc that you get, the first one is the firmware loader. The second one has the actual software, and then the third one it's the licensing manager. So it's the same software, whether it's wideband or narrow from the software standpoint. The difference is the license key that you purchase from your hand-friendly dealer. This is what the license manager looks like. And so under software, you get a little licensing file, whether it's wideband or narrowband. You copy it in here, and you authorize the software on your computer. The software license key allows you to have it only on one computer, and it's tied to your CPU ID, and it may be your hard drive. So if you want to move it from one computer to another computer, you go unlicense it, and it puts your license back into the pool on the left. From a radio management standpoint, this is from my 5000. I went ahead and I read the radio. The features that my 5000 have is on the right. On the left is the features that I have purchased, and you can see that they're on this particular one that I've got all of the features that I've purchased assigned to whether it's this radio or to another radio. Firmware loader, you can use this to program the firmware or new firmware into your radio. This is the firmware I used for the 5000 when I did some updates. And so from the programming software, James had alluded to it. It's it's FPU, or Field Programming Unit, is if you go to the About screen, that's what Kenwood calls it. I'll talk a little about some of the facts. I'm not going to do anything about the 1000 series. We can do some walkthroughs on the 3000 series and on the 5000 series. There's also slides in order to save time that we can go through that shows a lot of the procedures and the steps to go through in programming. If you have any questions, please ask. Some of the factoids, or I called it factoids, and some of the code plug preparations, when you're starting from scratch, you need to figure out, how many zones do you want, if any? If you don't want to use any zones, how many channels can you have per a specific zone? It's also the character fields. If you're going to name the channel or the zones, they vary with the different versions of software. So when I set up my list and kind of do my preparation in Excel, I keep these things in mind, because if you look at the Rocky Mountain website, some of the names may be 16 characters on one brand of radio, but 12 on another brand. So I kind of look at this, I put this table together to kind of help me. I find that it's useful. So this is the KPG-3N. It's for the 3000 series, and I will go through a couple of the sections real time. We'll see if everything is going to work real time going through this. So this is what the CPS looks like for the 3000. On the right, you've got a question mark. That's for the help files. Again, it's, if you can't find something, do a search. There's an awful lot of information for the 3000 in the help file. Preferences, you'll need this to set up your COM port so you can talk to radio. Under the tools, there's nothing really that we would use for the 3000 series. This is the menu we'd find for the read and write. ID management. The one thing about ID management that I will show you is you need to have a digital or a DMR system created. Otherwise, the global ID and the DMR conventional is not under ID management. Under the radio configuration is where you'll spend most of your time. And everything is pretty much in order on the with the systems. The first thing that you need to do is you actually create a system when you go through. And I'll just click on, we've got 3 systems in here, but to add a new system, you'll hit the plus key. And you go through and you can add the analog or DMR or site roaming. I typically don't add zones that are just analog conventional. I'll do the DMR conventional because you can add analog channels in that.
System means I'm not following the concept.
A system is nothing more than, or Willem had asked, or I guess you had the microphone on the system. It's just a group of channels. So this mode was similar to the 5000, I call it the personality mode. But basically with a system, you can have all your channels on analog, so you can decide, it's like a hard disk with files. You can put and say, hey, all of my analog channels, I'm going to add them under this system to make it easier to keep track of. But or if you want to have DMR channels, it's kind of the mode that it will support. So if you've got if you've got DMR conventional, all of the channel types that you put in there will be a DMR channel, or you can make it as an analog channel. But you can go ahead and have several DMR channel conventions. So if you want to have, I've got DMR, I want to put all Rocky Mountain ham, you can have that in one system. Or if you want to have a DMR and say, I want to have all my, all of the north channels in this system, I want all of the south channels in this system. It's just a grouping of channels that you put in the radio. And from this system, you can mix and match them once you create your zone. That not make sense?
But the system, when you access the radio from the front panel, you don't see the systems. This is just for inside the software.
This is just inside the software. The systems is how you pretty much create it. But again, with the personality type of strategy, is you can, once you create the channels, you can put the channels in the systems once, and then you can call them multiple times once you get down to the zones, and actually rename what the channel is in the zone. So you could have the name in the system as North or Boulder North. You could go down and change it to something else once you use it if you choose. But just to add one, you can just pick. You can pick the DMR conventional and give it a new name. So that goes ahead and adds another system, and there's just some other tabs across the top. Most of this, you really don't need to do anything in the DMR tab from the system. You've got an analog tab that you could make some changes, for the type of signaling. Most of this would be for a commercial type of radio. The big part in after you have the system is the personalities. And this is kind of where I think personalities, it gets kind of a misnomer. It's basically a channel. So each channel is a personality. So, this one you can be like Buckhorn. You can hit the plus key, and you can call this one Squaw. I guess it's formally known as Squaw now. I'm not going to put Mestahay in here. It's formally known as. So you've got two modes to enter in all of your channels on the 3000. You've got the personality mode, which is under this table. Again, I've got some slides that will go. I'm going to highlight now through the programming software, but the slides go through in kind of a step-by-step that match a detailed list. I just didn't want to take too much time to kind of go through all of it or repeat the slides. But there's two modes that you can enter all of the information either from a table format. As you go across, you can see the color code, the slots selection, and all of the information that you would need for a channel. Conversely, you can enter the channels in one at a time, or you can do part of it on the table format, and you go to the channel format. And the important things here, I mean, you've got the basics, the receive and the transmit channels. You've got your color code. You've got your slot selection. The one thing with the Kenwoods is, especially if you're going to be using, talking to other radios other than Kenwood, I recommend turning off the dual slot mode for compatibility, because it normally, from my understanding, it'll pick a channel. Since there's two time slots on DMR, it will pick the one that is open. And so it's typically a Kenwood feature. The busy channel lockout, this is the same as the admit criteria that James was talking about in Motorola. So it's kind of converse, where it was color code free in Motorola. This is when it locks it out, and it's the correct color code. So it's the same thing, but it's just called something different in the software. And then for the in-call, I always just put, follow whatever you have for the busy channel lockout. Again, for digital, you'll use the for digital, you'll use the correct color code and follow the BCL, and you'll just do always in an analog mode for the same reasons we do in the Motorola. And I always, for the talk around, I always leave that checked as well. So after you have all of your system names that you've created, you've put all of the channels for the radio from the personality perspective, and you've named them, the next thing that you'll go to is the zone channels. And in the zone channels, you go ahead and you can create all of the zones that you want. This one has got Rocky Mountain Central East. I created a simplex analog zone, a roam zone, and a central zone. This is not the entire code plug for Rocky Mountain Ham. This was just one that I put together for the exercise. I will show you some tricks that I've learned with this as we go along, but I want to have some time to kind of go through this, to kind of get a feel for the data that's here. If you've got some specific questions, please ask. So outside once you have the zone, once you've done the systems and the personalities, which is the same as the channels, you create your zone, and then you need to have the channels added per zone. So on the other, we had a DMR analog zone. So you can select from that, you can select which zone do you want to put it in, or which system is it coming from. And when you go to the personality, there's a drop down that shows all of the channels that you've created that you add from the system. And again, each of these channels can be a mixture between a NXDN zone or an analog or whatever is in the radio. You can rename, here it's called Thornton Rocky Mountain. If you want to have a different name in your zone, you can actually modify the name. it gets confusing. I usually keep the personality and the channel name the same going through. You select whether you want it to be part of a scan. Most of the things, I mean, there are a lot of options for the scan and priority scans and multi-zone scans. I'm not really going to go into that with this. I typically will do a zone scan and just add them here, and that's as far as you've got to go. So that's if you're using the channel table mode, that's where you would put them in. If you like the different, if you want the list mode, you can go through and you use these buttons here. You can figure, okay, what zone do I want to edit? And you can click through. What else do we want to do? And I'll go through a little more detail on cut and paste and some different things in a minute. I kind of want to get through some of the other options. The scan options, there's a lot of different options. There's more options than you could shake a stick at. But normally I'll just do the single zone scan. And you don't have to really populate this, as once you add the scan to the list on the channel, it fills these out. Site roaming, I leave everything default if you don't know what it does. From doing this presentation, there are some standard roaming and some quick roaming that you can play with and change some thresholds. Typically it works without playing with these. I do want to do some playing with it to understand, can I make it scan a little better for roaming? In a code plug, the other thing that, like James had mentioned, you've got buttons to play with. So depending on you get a copy of the front panel of the radio. This happens to be a mobile, and you can have a lot of functions that do you want it volume up or volume down? These are pretty much the default, but when you see when I click a channel, let me see. When I actually click on a button, it highlights the button. It highlights the button on the radio. Or if you go, volume down, you'll see it's assigned to. For driving here, I'm getting used to the zoom mode on this. That's enough for zoom mode here. But you get the idea for the buttons, and there's a whole bunch of buttons. When you click this, you've got a whole list of what they do that you can select. The secondary buttons, if you want to have, hey, I've got all of these buttons for DMR. I've got all of these buttons when I'm on analog, or you're doing some event. You can have secondary buttons. I typically don't use it. It's just another way to confuse everything. You'll need to go to, on the DMR field. Okay, the only thing really under the DMR that I look for is the group channel display type. If you want to see whatever is in your individual list and want it to come up to say, hey, this is, instead of saying the radio ID, it'd use like, hey, this is Mark N7 CTM, you need to select this is for the calling transceiver ID to make it show up on your screen. All of these other features on the left, you don't really need to do anything with those. They're all for commercial and beyond the scope. Let's see what else we have here. Customization, probably the only thing that you can play with here is how you want the radio to sound. This only works for digital modes, but if you're hearing the radio and it's got a lot of bass in it, you can come here on the receive side and play with an equalizer to make it sound like what you want. if you're transmitting and somebody's saying, "Now, I can't understand you, you've got so much bass," from your transmit audio, you can go through and say, "Hey, I want to get rid of some of my highs, I need to boost the lows," or vice versa to make it sound better. It is really picky. I know when James got his first radio, it sounded like crap. And he was able to go in and we kind of worked and talked, and he played with it to make it sound good, both to me on the transmit and then on the receive as well. I typically, on all of the Kenwoods, I'll typically leave the audio gain off and I'll turn the audio processing off. Kenwood, at least on the previous software, just doesn't seem to have the A&R and the AGC working correctly. Here is
One comment for you, that exactly what you said about Kenwood. We're pretty much using the same microphone on Kenwood on all the models, whatever the part number is. On the 5000s, 3000s, it's the standard hand mic. When we get into the Motorola world, and maybe James mentioned this, but I'm not positive, they have 3 different shape factors, and those tend to have 3 different audio output levels that the Motorola DMR Mark group and the other guys have said, tailor your audio settings to the microphone you have. So just be advised, if you change microphones, you might have to change some of these settings. Audio fidelity and output level differences.
And that's a good comment. I haven't played as much with the 3000. I focused an awful lot on the 5000, and I'll show it when we get to the 5000 programming software. If you use an external microphone, you've got a lot of default profiles that you'll need to set up, because it'll sound different if I use a particular external microphone like this or one of the other microphones. So there's a lot of options with the Kenwood, and a lot of it you just have to play through it. See back on the presentation here where I was at. So I will show, before I get, since I've got this screen up, for a lot of the preparation and that I've done for both there's some examples here for my basic code plug planning, there's some specifics on the 3000 series and some specifics on the 5000. And I will go back and show you how this is used. But when I put together a code plug, I liked all of the information in one place. So, I've got a tab here. Let me see. Excuse me driving. I'm not used to using this computer in the Zoom mode. But I'll usually put the things that I am going to use when I program a code plug. Even on my Motorola programming, I kind of start here so I have everything in one place. So I usually put like my IDs. Here's some of the group IDs that I picked for the example. Some of the individual IDs that I may put in my radio. These are not required. Here's the group contact list. You can use it for receive group. Typically, you need a receive group on Motorola. They follow the transmit group on the Kenwood, so they're not really needed. And they do the same thing for zones, but what I wanted to how to drive my computer. Too many options, just like on the programming software. Because Dave Mack said, hey, you've got to be able to do some zooming. So I had to look it up when I got home last night. But typically, this is still the format that I picked off of the website from the earlier in the presentation on copying and pasting and coming up with the information so I can have it readily available at my hands. So specific to the Kenwood, and I'll show you how to copy and paste, but a lot of when you're in the table view, you can do a left click and you can copy and you paste it into Excel, and this shows you the format. This is kind of a template for the Motorola, or for the mobile, and this is the information that you would need to put in a spreadsheet or some way to copy and paste in if you don't want to type everything in manually. So this was out of the 3000 mobile. I selected a channel from the personality in the system, and this is the fields that it needs in order to be happy to copy and paste it in. So everything in gray here, as I do better with spreadsheet gymnastics rather than typing things in the radio manually. The 3000, you can do almost all of it with a copy and paste if you've got a lot of channels. So I can go ahead and, I can go ahead and just take this, do it for, I can go ahead and copy this and put it directly in the radio. And you can do this for the IDs, you can do this for the system channels, and you can do it for the zone channels. But if you just do a copy out of the radio, paste the template into Excel, manipulate the data that you want, you can copy and paste it into the radio. And the 3000 series does really well with that. Yep.
Is it off, for example, if you have a name that is too long, does it blow up or does it just truncate it?
I haven't, I haven't tried if it's too long. It is very picky. I know for a lot of it, for none, it likes none with a capital N, O-N-E, rather than all capitals. So it is very picky. That's how come I typically look at the length of the various names and try to adhere to that. This will let you know if it's got a problem. And the other, as you can see the templates here, if you grab a template out of, let's say, a mobile, it may have another field. So this doesn't just look at, when you do a copy and paste, at the field names. It wants everything in the table. It has everything filled out. So it's, it's kind of a start that you may have to modify your template, but it does give you an opportunity, if you don't want to type everything in, to import it directly. Let me go find the... Copied that in. So that particular file would be under a system. I could use my new system here. I can go into the table, and here's the little paste button. Yeah, we'll see. Table I took that out of. Oh, that's out of the IDs. Sorry. There's, this template is provided. I just had the wrong item that I copied from. This is one is from the personality mode. So you can copy it from here, go here, paste maybe, and there's your channels. So it does save you a lot of typing.
So I noticed when you did the copy and paste, you actually included the headers too, right?
Yes, you need to have the headers in, and it needs to have those specific headers, not just that column. It seems to look for the exact match for the table name, and it also needs to have the same amount of columns. So, typically if you copy something out as a template, paste it, you can do some manipulation. And with the 3000 series, you can do that for all of the channels that you have under a system, with the 3000. The same thing with the zones. So for the 3000 with the zones, I went through the same exercise. I know a lot of the, I think a lot of the ARIES, or some of them are getting the 3000 series radios. It's probably the easiest, in my opinion, you know, to get set up if you've done your spreadsheet gymnastics. Because I make mistakes if I type a lot of the stuff in by hand. So for example, under figure out where in the zones, I pick a zone and I go to the table mode, and you can do the same thing. Copy it. I like it when everything's okay. Well, we locked up. I locked up the CPS, and I guess that's kind of a always save as you're going through. And so I don't know why this one. It's because I live. Hopefully it didn't kill my other one. So I will go back to the kind of the slides here. You know, I know I've been kind of all over the place, but I do have. The whole point of this is you can build templates and copy and paste it into the 3000 series radio. So from the presentation standpoint, this is kind of what I've used for the walkthrough. You know, I was going to go through and build kind of the whole code plug, every little step as we go through. But as you can see with live mode, sometimes things don't work. But I have included extensive slides. We've reviewed my information in Excel for the templates to look for it. It also has some of the stuff for the 5000s that we'll go through next. These were the high level. Go ahead, Willem.
Also noticed that they seem to be inconsistent in their naming. Sometimes they call it a channel and sometimes they call it a personality. Is there a distinction, or is that truly the same thing?
In the 3000 series, I consider it the same thing. When you get to the 5000, there's a channel and personality mode, but the channel, you know, I always think of the personality as the channel. That's where I kind of get confused with some of the naming or looking at people's code plugs, because a lot of them you'll see, you know, again, with the systems or personality, they'll break it out and have multiple headings of, hey, these are my analogs, these are the LARC, here is the NCARC channels, and thinking that, oh, I have to have everything match in the systems and personalities that you put in zones, and that's not the case. Yes. Yeah, and I'll do. Hopefully that one won't lock up. And I mean, when I was working on the slides here, I was almost done, and the very last step, I figured, you know, I think I should save this. And John's pointing at the clock. I better hurry out. I will. So the programming steps, I'm not going to. These are just listed in the presentation. On, you know, you create the systems. You go through this list of steps. I've detailed the programming steps and put 1 through 25 on the NX3000. I've went through and you know, I'm not going to discuss each of these slides. I was attempting to do this real time, but these steps match the numbers that I have previously, and to kind of go through and walk through what you need for programming the 3000. And so for the 5000, in order to, you know, to save some time so we can get to the exercise, and spend some time with the 5000 is, again, the 5000, you can copy and paste some things, others you cannot. I'll show you some of the differences when we go through. But again, you've got a copy of my Excel spreadsheet that you can look at and match up with the presentation. So the 5000 has got, and I'll show you in the software, it's got two programming. It's the personality format is pretty much what we went through with the 3000, and there's the channel format that I use. The one that has the most flexibility from a user standpoint is definitely the personality mode, but there's very little that you can do to copy and paste. It's pretty much, you've got to type everything in manually, or you can go through and we'll see you can do from a channel format, and it will do a one-way convert to a personality format, but you'll have to go through and do some cleanup at the end. And the big difference is in the personality format is you add or configure channels up with the system before you create your zone and add your channels. On the table format, you create your system, and then you actually add the channels individually in the zones. These are, and I will go start doing a little driving on and pointing out a couple things on the actual software if it doesn't lock up. But with the NX5000, these are the programming steps, and I went ahead, these are using the channel configuration. Again, it's the same steps. It's a matter of, do you add your physical channels at the system level, or do you add them at the zone level? So again, you've got the presentation. You can walk through the individual steps on how to do it, rather than me, to save some time, so we can get to the lab of going through one at a time. Again, there's 13 steps that I kind of put for the 5000 for the channel mode, and for the NX3000 it was like 25 steps, but it had a lot of saves along the way. I guess there's 17. So I'll cover with part of the walkthrough. We'll talk about the kind of the important with the product information. We'll look at a couple of the features going through. Here again, we've got, and I'll do part of it here before I go to the live mode. But you need to set up the COM port before you get started. These are the steps for reading the radio. Save as. Typically, it wants to save the code plug with the default name. When you read your radio, save it. But if you just hit the save button at the top, you may overwrite the program, the config that you've already have in there because of a duplicate file name. I'll just use the slide, for this. Part of it under the product information, if you don't, either you read your radio and it will fill out the model number, but you need to make sure that this is correct, or if you're setting up a code plug without the radio, is select the radio type, the frequency range. Again, these got a low and a high split, and this is where you set channel or personality. So if you start through on the channel mode and you go through and add your channels, if you come back and select personality, it will do a one-way convert. However, if you're in personality mode and you select channel mode, it will clear all of the data that you've put in. You need to select the whatever you have for your features in the radio or that you want. This particular radio will do 2 digital modes at a time, and this particular one of mine is P25 and DMR. And you just check the features that you want in the radio. In the channel mode, you go ahead and, just like with the 3000s, you go ahead and create your system. You go ahead and you can put your unit ID in here, and you select global if you want to have multiple systems. You can use the same radio ID that we talked about earlier that you can get to put it in once, and it follows through. Let's say you've got 20 DMR systems. It will use the same radio ID. The thing to point out is you do not want to select over-the-air aliasing. If you've got a Kenwood radio to Kenwood radio, it will actually send what is in the unit ID name. So technically, from a Kenwood to a Kenwood, you have your ID is embedded. But if you select over-the-air alias and use one of our any of our systems that go through the C bridge, it's going to sound like your mouth is full of marbles. And don't do it. If you have a hotspot, there's some features in the hotspots that do allow over-the-air alias. Make a different system. The other thing with I know some people, at least with the Chinese radios, are a contact junkie, and you can have up to 3,000 contacts. In the 5,000 and the 3,000, you can only have 1,500 contacts. That includes all your group IDs. That includes if you've got P25 and your individual IDs. So you go ahead and you can partition out the table. Once you just select any of the IDs, you can select the partition list. For the group IDs, this is this field. You can select the field, do a copy and paste to get your template, and you can do spreadsheet gymnastics and just paste them back in. So it's real nice if you've got a lot of group IDs that you don't have to type in the name and the IDs. So this part of the copy and paste works well for your group and individual IDs. And there's the individual IDs. These are the individual IDs that match on the Excel spreadsheet. So if you want to start with a new code plug, you can copy and paste that stuff in as an exercise. Time here. And this is where, because we're using the channel mode, is once you go into the zone information, this is where you put your channels in. Again, you can select and copy and paste out all of the channels. The caveat here is it does not deal with your access criteria, and your talk group ID can't be copied and pasted. And I think it was a different folks at Kenwood that wrote the software. So even if you can copy channels from one zone to the other, but you have to go back in and put the contact or the transmit contact again. So that's the caveat of doing this, but at least you can get the channels in. So once you go into the channel list, this is similar to the 3000. This is where you would select the correct color code or the admit criteria of follow the busy channel lockout. The one thing for all your channels for compatibility is to unselect the dual slot mode. And after you've copied and pasted in, you have to go through and change all of these on each individual channel. So it's a little work back and forth. It's not as nice as the 3000. And then you go ahead, save your code plug, and when you write it to the radio, you'll get a zeroize, which will take, if you've got system keys or some things in there because you use it for commercial, it will zero those out. You can set the time, and you write it to your radio. Kind of the caveat that I will point out is, if you don't have, like Doug in my radio, as I can't read his code plug because he's got system keys for some of the stuff that he does for work, so I cannot read his radio. You do have some options with the 5000 to open up 2 code plugs, and you can copy at least the channels and the IDs across, as long as you update your access or your admit criteria. So So just because we're running out of time, I know that was, quick going through. And we can go through once you start your lab programming. If you need to see some specific places on where to put the stuff, James and I will both, have our CPSs available, and we can kind of walk through and look at some of the places that you put the information. So this, I handed out everybody kind of what we're going to use for the programming lab. I do want to point out, I know there was some confusion because of the zone name. I called it RMH Denver, which used to be in the code plug under Central. This was just for this exercise, a zone name that I made. Are there any questions on, I know we're getting short here on, if you want to try to build the code plug, or do we want to, want to walk through on getting started for the radio IDs on a specific software? I can go through it from the, the 5000 perspective. James can go through it from the Motorola perspective. Anybody that's going to build, or there are questions, or anybody that's planning on building it, or how do we kind of want to work through this in the essence of?
Well, what are your folks' pleasure? Do you want to work on a particular code plug? Those who want to work on a particular code plug, raise your hand. I have a few questions. I don't know if it's of widespread interest, but if you back up a couple of slides, there was a lot of fields out to the right that I don't understand what the heck they mean. So, for example, I'm on the slide that is where you go to the DMR
number.
individual ID list.
Is there a page number on the?
117.
Okay.
There's, after ID mode, there's individual call, incoming, paging, individual, who knows what else. I can't see the rest of the fields. I don't know what those mean.
It's follow Mike doctrine. Is basically you don't need, they're all defaulted. When you put a individual ID in, you want it to be available for transmit and receive for what we're doing for the ham. These are just default settings. I haven't played with the alert tones and some different things. These are just defaults that I don't fool with. So I'll use Mike's doctrine a lot of different times through this.
It defaults to the right thing, so you don't have to fool with those settings.
Let me go down. These are under DMR. I will point out one thing here while I'm live. On the DMR information on the 5000, the very top item where it says unit ID display or group call, you need to check that. Is if you want your radio to pick something out of your individual ID and show it on the display. So that's one thing that you'll need to collect or click to make that happen. Group ID list. If you go down if I just want to add one, I'll just put 1000 here. Once I do that, it fills in all of the others, transmit, common, and all you do is just give it a name. So most of the stuff when you go through, it actually defaults, and it seems to work. More questions?
Or do you have to type something in them?
Those are your choices. They are drop down. But like I say, that one.
Just don't mess with it.
That's kind of what I've found. The help file is real good. I kind of recommend that, a lot of it is start with a blank code plug, add a couple things to it, put it in your radio, and then go ahead and see how it behaves. And, even some of the help files I get a little confused with for a while. I may have to reach out to, Dirk, my support system on some of this, but a lot of it, he'll tell me, just go with the default, it works.
the questions here, but I have a question for James. On Motorola, if I have CPS running on one machine and I want to move it to another machine, does it have the same feature as the Kenwood that you can release the entitlement and then reuse it somewhere else?
You mean for the CPS itself?
Yes.
No, doesn't have any license management built into it at all. It's just, if you have the program, it installs and there's no activation or anything. It's a honor system to be in the terms of your agreement with Motorola. So. Yeah, so the software itself doesn't have anything like that, but the entitlements, as John said, like if you put a 25 hertz, wideband software key, that stays and is used inside that CPS, and that can't be moved or removed. But the software itself, it doesn't have any licensing. It's on the honor system. Entitlements for software stay with that software and can't be removed out of that software. Entitlements in the hardware stay with the hardware.
25 kilohertz keys are.
Right, yeah, the wideband keys are free.
And if you've got in Kenwood, if you've got, or even if in Motorola, if you've got a virtual machine and copy it from one system to another, it will still work. Using the same virtual machine. Kenwood, on the other hand, if I was to take my Windows virtual machine and put it on another Mac, the Kenwood entitlement won't work. So in cases like that, before you move machines, you need to give the license back to Great Kenwood in the Sky.
And I wanted to, something Mike brought up earlier, first two things, when we were talking about buttons, I brought up a code plug here for HT versus the mobile I had, and you'll see how the button assignments are different. The button descriptions are different, they match. That was one thing I wanted to point out. The other one is the scan list and where you transmit. When you're in a scan list, down at the bottom, this TX designated channel, that's what determines where your radio transmits when you're scanning. So if you have selected, if you heard a channel here and you have a different one selected, it always does selected. This is also, there's a lot of choices, but the last active channel is probably your most likely other used one. So you go back out the same place you came in.
Change how long
Stays on that TX channel.
you can either set that up for a long duration if your use case needs it, or if you always want to transmit back to whatever you set the channel select to, you can set that value very low.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of tuning you can do on scans based on your use case, and there's plenty of ways that you can screw yourself.
Yeah, well, and that's true for so many pieces of this software, but I wanted to point that specific one out because I pointed it out as something we see on the system as people having misprogrammed and crisscrossing, so thank you for the, yeah. I think, did Emmett have a question?
Yeah, how on the Motorola software can you bulk load contacts? The program used to be able to do that with has been gone for years.
Okay, let's find the correct way to say this. It's not gone. You can find it. The reason it's hard to find is that Motorola owns the code, right? The code plug is proprietary information. And the way that contact generator worked for Motorola was by taking a code plug, disassembling it, inserting the contacts and reassembling it. That is illegal. So that software is illegal. It's out there. I can't recommend anyone use it because it is actually illegal. Unlike the Chinese one that works with CSVs and everything, that's the reason that the Motorola contact generator software is hard to find and why it actually is a violation of terms of Motorola. So, if someone finds that and uses that, they do so at their own risk, but that's why.
We can jam into CPS and get it to read the fields?
No. And you know, Mark and I had that discussion when we were planning this this presentation. I don't work off spreadsheets in this at all. I work off of a blank code plug and I build right in there. So I'm sorry, I do not. The Mike, K0NGA, that does the Chinese code plugs, does work off spreadsheets, and so does Mark. So one of them might have an option that would work for others to start with, but I don't have one for myself.
Import in the Motorola?
No, there's not.
Rollers.
Yeah.
I've got one more, I guess we're keeping you between lunch, so I've got one more thing to show. On Kenwood, with some of the buttons that are there, I mean, you can click and it shows you what button is on the radio. And I was going to ask Doug on this button. What is this button, Doug? I mean, you had a little story because I think that's what keeps us between lunch.
Oh, yes. You are, think of this as an episode of Shark Tank, and you're between the sharks and lunch.
Yes.
That button up top, that is known as the pizza button. Because if you push that button on a public safety radio, you're going to declare an emergency, and you're going to owe everybody in the department pizza. I use that button to display radio signal strength. And whenever one of my public safety customers comes in and they see me push that button, they really freak out because they think they're going to have to buy pizza.
So
But it is definable, but just be careful if you're in the public safety world and you have public safety radios that look just like these, you might not want to use that button.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? I think if not, we'll wrap up. Do you have any final comments, Willem?
I was just going to thank everybody who participated today. First of all, our two presenters. As you can tell, they've put in a tremendous amount of effort in preparing these, and also our AV team that was here yesterday and ran everything smoothly all day. So very much appreciate everybody's efforts, and we hope to see you at the HAMFest next Saturday.
A wrap.
Thank you.
Thanks.